Hi everyone, it's Olga from Ego, and I'm so excited because in these last two videos I will be talking about the very last Tsar of the Russian Romanov family, thus ending my Romanov series. And the last Russian Tsar, Nicolas II, is probably one of the most famous of them all. There's so much to talk about, and even though this is the first video about Nicholas in the Romanov series, I've already created several videos on the topic. Please check them out. For example, there's a separate video dedicated to Father Gregory Rasputin, who is often associated with the last royal family. I gave a big hour-long talk on the death of the last royal family and the search for their remains. Feel free to check them out. Also, I'm making a really detailed commentary of the Netflix show called The Last Tsar, where there is a video for each episode of the show, and some episodes even got two videos dedicated to them. I'm leaving the links to all of these videos in the notes, so please feel free to check them out. And these videos in the Romanov series, they are more of the overview of the rule of Nicholas II, so you can learn more about what life in the country was like, what were the reforms like, and how the rule started and ended. Right, so let's start with the beginning of Nicholas's rule. In the last video, I talked about his father, Alexander III, and we're not sure exactly how his father died, but most likely, some people believe that the cause of his death was actually too much alcohol. Anyway, really quickly after the death of his father, Nicholas took over the throne, and soon after he also got married. So his marriage and his honeymoon happened in the period of mourning. That did not negatively affect his marriage at all. Nicholas II had a wonderful family life with his wonderful wife Alexandra, a German princess, and they had 4 daughters and 1 son. Nicholas and Alexandra are one of these rare examples of the royal family that actually loved each other. They met when they were kids, and Nicholas actually asked his family to allow him to marry Alexander, even though at first they were against it, and Alexander's grandmother, Queen Victoria, was also against it. But they were in love, they asked to get married, and finally their parents allowed it. There was lots of little pieces of evidence of their life that is still left. For example, wonderful photos of the last royal family having fun together. Or in one of the windows of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, there is still a little inscription that Alexandra scratched on the window as she was looking at her husband. It says, "Nikki looking at the hussars." You can see the picture of it right here. However, the wedding of the last royal family is connected with a grim event, which is known as the tragedy of the Khodynka field, where lots of people came to Moscow to celebrate the coronation of Nicholas II, and they knew that they would be getting a little gift set, which included a scarf, a gingerbread, a memorial cup. And people wanted those gifts so much that way more people came to Moscow from all regions of Russia that it was planned to. And ultimately, when they heard that the gifts were being distributed, everybody rushed in, and lots of people ended up dying, being stumbled in the crowd. To be precise, more than 1,300 people died. And as the rule of Nicholas II started with a very tragic event, he got a nickname, Nicholas the Bloody Tsar. Another event that reconfirmed that nickname was the first Russian Revolution of 1905, but we're going to talk about it a little bit later. So anyway, as Nicholas II took on the throne, he made a speech, and in his first speech, he made it really clear that even though some czars before him, to be precise, his grandfather Alexander II, started some liberal reforms, he was not planning on being a liberal czar, and it was really important to him to guard the basis of absolute monarchy, because he believed that this is what his Russian people needed. And basically, as soon as he made that speech, the attitude about him in the Russian society pretty much immediately changed. People started feeling cold towards him, both the liberal parties in the country and just the regular aristocrats, because people still had hopes of the liberal reforms. They heard immediately that it wasn't happening. As you can imagine, it really changed everything. And in general, the rule of Nicholas II is full of contradictions. On one hand, it was the rule of great economic growth. Production in the country was rapidly growing. For example, the economic growth of agriculture in the country on average was about 2% a year. As for factory production, it was 4 or 5% a year. The life of factory workers in the country got better. Different laws were established, for example, limiting the length of a work day to 11.5 hours, protecting children from working at factories, and factories that had over 100 employees actually had to provide free medical care to the factory workers, which was wonderful as well. Unfortunately, a lot of these reforms died down towards the end of the rule of Nicholas II, and maybe that's what affected also the great number of uprisings in the factories at that time. Another wonderful thing that happened for the Russian economics is that we were really actively getting coal and oil, which also affected the economic growth in the country. And finally, the construction of railroads was also at its height. By 1913, in the Russian Empire, there were over 70,000 kilometers of railroads. Again, though, towards the end of the rule of Nicholas II, the construction of the railroads really died down because the priorities at that point were really different. So what happened, and what changed the wonderful rule of Nicholas II for the worst? What made the Russian Revolution happen? Make sure to click subscribe so that you can see my next video dedicated to Nicholas II that's coming out next week, and you can learn all about the Russian Revolution. Stay tuned.